Hey everyone, this is DayTraderRockStar, and this is an ongoing educational video series, The School of Stock, and this is another playbook play from the HPS methodology, a playbook player, really the stock, the great setups that always show up in the market. They're very high probability setups, and I break them down on the videos, and we talk about the level, what we look for, the key characteristics, the indicators that need to line up together, and we wait for those, we scan for them, and when they do, we take them, and they're high probability, and they're money-making trades. So this next setup is called, and it can be called two things. It's called X marks the spot, but it's also a channel within a channel. And this is a if I rank this as, if I have about 6-7 setups that I track and trade off of, this would rank up there in the top two. And it's not to break them down, not to put the best overall best bet, but this is definitely one of the best setups out there, and it's because it combines two of the setups. Again, when we talk about our indicators, we talk about the stochastics, the trend lines, the moving averages, the recognizable patterns, and candlesticks, all combining into certain levels. When you have two trend lines, a trend line here forms between having two pivot areas on the chart, draw that straight line, and then watch for that reaction when the price comes down to it. And you can actually build channels by learning how to develop a 1-2-3 pattern, which only requires 3 pivot areas to put in a channel in there. So when we have that 1-2-3 pattern, which is a great way of trading in that recognizable channel, right down here it says X marks the spot, but pretend this other trend line wasn't even there. This would be a HPS setup on its own because it's a lower trend line bounce, oversold stochastic, 1-2-3 pattern. And you might say, well, there's no trend line here. Well, there is. Based off of these two trend lines and this trend line, you make a parallel line, and that represents that channel. But the fact is that we had a good pivot area back here and a pivot area back here, and there's an underlying trend line comes in. It crosses, intersects this other trend line in this pattern. This becomes pretty much like a dual pattern setup. You have this underlying pattern, which is a pullback to a trend line and a bounce. Plus, this is a this is a pullback to the lower trend line of this channel. We'll call this a channel line, the one coming down. And they kind of combine, and they give you a great entry level, an area. You never really wanted to say, well, I got to hit the trend line like right at the X. It's not about that. It's about coming down into that zone and then watching a reaction off of that zone. It'll be impossible. Lots of times you'll see one of the trend lines be tagged, but it's really impossible to kind of gauge if you're going to get the lower trend line to hold up, the bottom, is it going to be a flush. The combination here, if we zoom in a little, you'll see that we have that reversal candle, and that's really the kicker. That's really your confirmation. You had the oversold stochastics, you had the underlying trend line, you had the 1-2-3 pattern, and you have the rising trend line, and this is what you typically look for. It's a great combination because, of course, it's 2 HPS setups in one, and you have all these things working for you at the same time. So I want to give you some examples of this, and there's actually a trade setting up this week on the watch list. It sounds like I have a little cough tonight, so I apologize for that. Here we have First Solar. First Solar is another example. You have this really good underlying trend line that comes under and hits these levels. And then you have what we appear to be flags forming. And remember, a flag is overall a channel, and a channel is, could be defined by having those pivot areas on both sides, usually an equal distance between the trend lines, causes that channel. Now, the channel doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes you have a wedge pattern. Sometimes, but there's usually one trend line of the channel that's really intact, and there's the stronger of the trend lines, and we could adjust the other trend line to kind of compensate for that. In this case, when we look at these type of pullbacks, we're always concentrating on the lower trend line. So it's the lower trend line you're concentrating here, and the rising trend line that you're you're concentrating on right here. And right here it comes back down. Plus you have that 200 period moving average, and of course you have that oversold level here. Playing out. You even have a divergence here, which is a lane divergence we won't talk about here in this video. And from that point on, that's your higher probability setup, and you actually see a bigger move coming out. Now, I went into this because this is part of the educational section on Day Trading Radio. I went in there and kind of, told you that when you do have a potential X marks the spot, you see this rising trend line or lowering trend line. Don't get caught up into believing that needs to be tagged. meaning that has to, because it's an X, that you're going to wait for it, because right here you came down to that underlying trend line was defined here by 1, 2, 3 good pivots. This is your fourth pivot or your channel trade pivot, but you're perfectly oversold here, and that combination in itself is an HPS setup. So this is really the buy zone right here, and just because you have this underlying trend line underneath, that doesn't mean we need to come down here. This is important if we find ourselves at this level. That's, that's the time, and if you can find yourself at this level is really great. This level is very great. And again, just everything else. You might look for that candlestick here, a sign of something, but the oversold levels here really played out well. That's really important down here. And everything else is really good. So X marks the spot. Continue a channel within a channel. It's really the lower trend lines, and this is a good example of one of those type of patterns. There's other patterns you can find here, and I'm going to show you one right now. All right, this is the other type of channel within a channel, and this is an active setup on the HPS watch list. So for those out there, a little plug, don't know about that. That's a watch list that I send out each week, and we talk about, or I actually set up, I chart out all the stocks and give you all those high probability setups based on the buy zones and the profit zones and the stops, and these are all inputted into the system here at Day Trading Radio, and when those levels are triggered, you automatically get that email saying, all right, Tractor Supply Company is hitting its buy zone. You get that information delivered to you, email, text, and you're able to act on it. And I usually act on it too, so you get those emails right after that. So that's why I don't want to miss this setup. This is one of the best setups ever. I don't want to miss it. I don't know if we're going to get down there, but this is a pattern that is a very high probability pattern. Once you come down into the combination of this underlying, again, 1, 2, 3 pattern, but also a tighter channel here, this becomes a very powerful area. Now, got in it today because I do expect this pattern to play to the upside here at one point. And I said, if we do pull back down there, I'll just add to the position. We actually had a pretty okay day today. So we're going to continue to watch this week. But this is the other type of, another example of a channel within a channel, and how that X marks the spot down here becomes that real high probability zone. And, you get alerted to it when it happens. This is a little better example, and this is, again, it's really about those trend lines. Sometimes I say channel within a channel, but the most important part is those lower trend lines. The pullback to the lower trend line, you might be able to throw a trend line up here and make this a channel, but it really doesn't matter, because this is the underlying trend line is the important part here. And the same thing here. We start to get down to a level where the price comes down and meets this. It happens to be an exact meet, and big bounce off of it. I can tell you this moved up higher. This is one of my stocks that I've recorded just for just for the setup and to use in videos like this. But a great setup there and tap. So you get in a picture what the channel within a channel, or what we call X marks the spot. Both interchangeable. It doesn't have to be a channel, but it's more important to have those trend lines intersecting. It could be a rising trend line, a lower trend line. It could be in any situation. It's just you have to establish the rules of the trade, understand what you're looking at as overbought or oversold levels, and where's your lowest resistance. In this case, you have a lot of support, you have a lot of interest down here, you're oversold. We're going to look for that bounce back up towards that 20-period moving average. All right, and I want to just show you that channel within a channel, X marks the spot, works on all time frames. So I showed you some examples on the daily, but we even jumped to the opposite spectrum here, and this is the 1-minute chart of today. So you can see I identified an underlying trend line earlier in the day, went out from looks like Friday's low through Monday, through the mid pre-market here Monday, and then we came down to it and tagged it today, and it was a great level because you know why? We had this 1, 2, 3 pattern, and we had this cross down here. This pattern matched up perfectly. It was 1, 2, 3 pivot areas. Draw that parallel line, cross here, X marks the spot, and look at the reaction you get off of that. I mean, it's just a great overall, just a little way of trading the markets. I consider one of the highest probability setups in the system of the playbook plays, and this video will be added to the playbook section there. So I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to check out, it's in the members forum. On top of the dashboard you'll see playbook plays. Check them all out. There's about 8 really great setups, and this is included in it.